Welcome everybody. Another beautiful day here in Seattle. Unfortunately, Councilmember Mosqueda was not able to join us today, but I just want to comment again how crucial her leadership and that of Council President Lorena Gonzalez was in reaching our package. They and their teams have worked tirelessly on this for weeks. I'm really grateful for their leadership. And also you'll be hearing from a number of people here today who will walk you through some of the announcements we have here, with our goal to bring as many people as we can inside safely and to get them not just to shelter but to long-term permanent housing. As you know, we announced last week that $49 million of the American Rescue Plan dollars would go to housing and homelessness. And with this investment, we expect that more than 750 households will be moved to safer places, with 450 provided safer spaces and another 300 hopefully into affordable permanent homes. Through the Seattle Rescue Plan, we've invested in a range of strategies to help our households who are experiencing all stages of homelessness. We're expanding our safe lots to help 25 households living in vehicles as they search for permanent living. We're increasing our rapid rehousing investments to help 185 families with rent subsidies for up to a year. We are reconnecting 250 individuals with family and friends who can offer a stable living environment, and will create at least 300 new housing units by leveraging additional state funding. This is in addition to the 1,000 units that will come online by 2022 for people experiencing homelessness. These investments, together with the investments we made in last year's budget and over time, represent the largest single investments across the spectrum of homelessness to try to make as big a difference as we can. As a city, our goal is simple, and that's to end a person's experience with homelessness. That's why supporting our national best practices like rapid rehousing, diversion, permanent supportive housing to really disrupt the cycle. We've had some successes in our hotel-based shelter success. As you know, we worked very closely with the county in the beginning, where they were able to relocate one of our shelters into the Red Lion, where they paid for the hotel rooms, we paid for the services. That has shown to be a very good model. Our 2-month-old hotel program now was created by pairing a shelter stay with exits to permanent supportive housing. That's the national best practice. We want to get people stabilized in the best, most humane and enhanced shelter possible, but then to get people into long-term housing. In just these last 2 months, we successfully moved more than 225 individuals into shelter, but as importantly, moved them on the path to permanent housing. And so far, we're seeing the investment is working. We've had 10 households transition to 9 leased apartments and 1 transitional housing. We have another 50 people who've enrolled in the rapid rehousing program. So as we get those spaces online, we'll be able to move more people. I really have to thank the providers of those 2 hotels, both Chief Seattle and Lehigh, who's here today. They've done just enormous work in a very short period of time under really difficult circumstances. Our permanent housing acquisition I'm very excited about this part of the rescue plan. With the $28 million, the city will leverage additional dollars to pilot new programs like the permanent supportive housing pilot that we launched last year, and hope to have 300 new additional homes. And the city has already been working in this space, as you know. Recently, the Office of Housing, who you're going to hear from today, was able to ensure that we could capitalize on a really remarkable opportunity where because of the pandemic, we saw the need for certain types of apartments. The market decreased, and the people that built those buildings needed to exit from that to make their deal pencil. So working with Lehigh, we now own and operate the Clay Apartments with 76 affordable homes that were immediately available to formerly homeless individuals, including a veteran, including one person who was at the press conference who had to leave because he was going to his job. That type of opportunity we're looking more for, and you're going to hear from Senator Frockt, who has just been an enormous partner down in the legislature, trying to get the dollars to take advantage of this kind of opportunity in the marketplace, which we never foresaw Seattle would have. As many of you know, our permanent supportive housing can take up to 3 years to build once it gets to the permitting and construction, and $350,000 a unit. We can't sustainably move people inside with that kind of cost and trajectory, and that's why these opportunities are so critical. I'm going to be the MC throughout this. I'm going to close, but turn it over to Senator Frockt, who I said has just really been such an incredible ally and made homelessness and housing such a priority, not just this session, but before, and was able to work in the capital budget to find ways to create a fund. We've worked with and talked to, last week I met with Senator Frockt and with Lisa Brown, who's the director of the State Department of Commerce, to get a start on what do we do to get this money into cities' hands as quickly as possible so we can move people out of homelessness. You'll also hear from Councilmember Lewis, who's here today, from Dan Weiss of Catholic Community Services, which has been a terrific partner with us, and from the Office of Housing, which is just doing such great things. We're across the street from a great project itself, but right now I'll turn the mic over to Senator Frockt.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor Durkan, and thank you for inviting me to join you today. You know, the legislative session that we just concluded about 6 weeks ago, there was a lot of emphasis on police reform. There was a lot of emphasis on tax reform. But one of the I think under-noticed or maybe underreported stories were our investments, our transformative investments in housing and homelessness around the state. And because of King County and the acute problem we have here in King County in terms of affordability and our homelessness crisis, a lot of that money will be coming back here over time. And so we work very closely with Mayor Durkan's team in Olympia to pass a number of things. We prioritized housing and homelessness to bring our neighbors experiencing homelessness inside. We invested over $350 million through the capital budget. I serve as the vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee and head of the Capital Budget Committee for the acquisition and development of affordable homes, including $175 million in the Housing Trust Fund. This was a near record investment. I'm proud to say that over the last several years we have been at the top of our mark in terms of our Housing Trust Fund investment, and we continue that this year. One of the innovative things that we did was we created a $120 million rapid capital housing fund to allow communities to get the type of shelter they need immediately or more quickly, and to assist them, which is supposed to be separate and apart from the type of work that the Housing Trust Fund does, which is develop longer-term solutions over 3 or 4 years. So the idea here was we have the Housing Trust Fund, which is part of our long-term solution, and the Rapid Housing Acquisition Fund as well for cities like Seattle to apply into. And additionally, we set aside specific amounts of money both for the Clay Apartments, for the Kiro Nursing Home project that is down in Africatown, and with Councilmember Lewis's leadership, we also set aside $2 million for additional tiny homes. But that's just for Seattle, but there are other things that Seattle can apply into, as well as many other communities. And the point of the meeting that we had the other day with Director Brown and her team at Commerce, and I think we got a message through, Mayor, which is we have the most acute problem in the state here in Seattle. And while we want to make sure we know there's a problem everywhere, it's important for the state to understand that this has to be a priority, because we've got lots of people coming from all around the state who are experiencing homelessness, and they end up here, and we end up bearing most of the burden. So we've got to have the state really focus on King County and Seattle, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to do that. We passed something very important called an increase in our document recording fee, which is our main operational funding source for homelessness services around the state. King County gets a very significant proportion of that money. And importantly, we created a permanent fund for permanent supportive housing operations, as well as an emphasis on those who are unsheltered. We changed that bill around with the city's help, and we offered some amendments, and the focus is now on permanent supportive housing funding, as well as getting people inside who are unsheltered. And that was a very important bill, and it wasn't covered very much, but it's going to generate up to $290 million every 2 years just from that one source alone, dedicated for permanent supportive housing operations, which is vitally important to get people inside here in Seattle. We passed bills involving 5160, which involves how we're going to deal with the eviction crisis or the eviction worries that we have that may happen when the moratorium is lifted, to give people more rental assistance, and or give landlords rental assistance that they can pay so that people will not be evicted. We leverage federal funds to the tune of almost $1 billion of all sources for rental assistance for around the state, which will go to tenants who need it, and also the landlords that have had their rent not being paid over the last year with the moratorium. So those were very, very critical. So overall, I think that we have an all-of-government approach from the state down to the county, down to the city levels, and I think we worked very well together this year. We have more work to do, and I will say, I think it's vital. The state has really stepped up in recent years in providing tools for our local governments to enact new policies, and we're counting on working closely with the county and with the city in executing on these policies with the funds that we have, so people will see a difference in the communities that we all love here in Seattle. Thank you very much. I appreciate again the chance to be here today.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I don't want to get lost. The document recording fee, as you'll hear from Emily, critical for us. We took a little bit of a risk and pushed forward in our program to do permanent supportive housing, knowing that we would have to find resources for that operation and maintenance, which can be a real cost prohibitor. And because of what they were able to pass in Olympia, that risk paid off, and we're further ahead in the program than we were. Next person you're going to hear from is the head of our Office of Housing, Emily Alvarado, who will talk to you about some of the programs we're doing to really address this issue. I can't say enough about Emily and our team at the Office of Housing. They have done remarkable things and have really looked for innovative ways to increase not just affordable housing, but permanent supportive housing, both from how do we get it to the marketplace, to how do we pay for it, to how is it constructed. And when they see opportunities like the Clay Apartments, it's not, no, we can't do that. It's how do we get it done? And how do we get more of that done? So you'll hear now from head of our Office of Housing, Emily Alvarado.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for your leadership. Thank you, too, to Senator Frockt. The partnership with the state is really tremendous in making sure that we can bring housing solutions to the forefront as quickly as possible. My name is Emily Alvarado. I'm the director of the City of Seattle's Office of Housing. And we all know that housing is an evidence-based solution to homelessness. We also know, and it's been made clear by the elected officials here and by members of our community, that we need to expedite delivery of that housing solution as fast as we can. That's what we're able to do through today's investment. Today's investment in capital, $28 million in capital resources, will help us acquire properties that will ensure we move people out of homelessness into safe, quality, permanent, affordable homes in record time. Because of today's investment, we're able to take advantage of a really unique and one-of-a-time condition in our real estate market to acquire buildings, multifamily apartment buildings that are under construction, or sites that are entitled and farther along in the permitting process, so that we can secure roughly 300 apartments for our homeless neighbors. And we know that rapid acquisition and delivery of housing can work. Last year, as part of the city's permanent supportive housing pilot, we sought to double a single year's production of permanent supportive housing in record time. And we did so by an accelerated investment in the voter-approved Seattle Housing Levy. And thanks to the ingenuity of our partners like Catholic Housing Services, we were able to secure sites like the one right behind you, which was an entitled site, and which will welcome our homeless neighbors as housed neighbors in Greenwood in less than 18 months following our funding announcement. We must continue to do this and all we can do locally to create affordable homes. And as I have said many times before, we need federal support and federal resources to end homelessness. That's why our American Rescue Plan funds and home funds being used for acquisition of affordable homes is so important. It marks a true partnership between federal, state, and local government in investing in the solution that we know will work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily, for that. And she's right about the federal help. I've had the opportunity to meet with and talk with a number of the cabinet officials at HUD, at HHS, and I'm very excited because they're looking for opportunities for cities to pilot some programs. We're already working with the Housing Authority here to make sure that there's new vouchers under the rescue plan, and we'll be able to put to work hundreds of vouchers in the Seattle area that are 10-year vouchers for people. So we are really looking at every avenue we can explore to help us with this. We can't scale without the help. We need the state, we need the county, and we need the federal government. There's just more people experiencing homelessness today than there was before, and with pending eviction moratoriums ending, we're very fearful about what could happen next. It's why the rapid rehousing part is so important. And when I said to Emily, can we shorten that timeline? Again, she didn't say no. She said, let me go to work on it. So thank you for that. The next person you're going to hear from is Councilmember Lewis, who's here. As you know, he chairs the Joint Committee on Homelessness, but he also has been, throughout his tenure, really all in on trying to figure out innovative approaches to addressing our very serious chronic issue with homelessness and what is really a crisis, a humanitarian crisis. So Councilmember Lewis, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for that generous introduction. Thank you all for being here. And I'm happy to be here not just to represent myself, but to represent my colleagues, Council President Gonzalez and Councilmember Mosqueda, who couldn't make it today, but certainly want to echo the great strides that we're making in this package through our careful collaboration to really structure something that can get the relief to our neighbors who have suffered so much, be they tenants who can't pay the rent, hospitality workers who have been laid off through no fault of their own, in some cases for an entire year or more, folks who are living unsheltered and living in encampments and vehicles because we cannot provide the enhanced shelter or the housing assets to give them a place to live with the dignity and the privacy that they as human beings deserve. This package makes strides in all of those areas due to collaboration between the mayor, the council, Senator Frockt, King County, and the federal government in a way that we frankly have not seen since the era of the New Deal. I just want to drill in a little bit to some of the investments that I'm particularly pleased with, and I know that my colleagues on the council are, as long as we have everybody here this afternoon. And there is no crisis that looms greater for all of us than homelessness. And if it hasn't been made evident until now, this panel up here clearly demonstrates that we can only solve this if we all come together as various levels of government, as a private sector, as a philanthropic community, and that is evident in the four corners of this plan that has been presented from the city today. Senator Frockt, I salute you and appreciate your leadership in partnering with the city to find $2 million in the capital budget to go directly to standing up more tiny house villages in partnership with the city of Seattle. Thank you for your leadership. Director Alvarado, in the spring, when I came to you and said, I don't want to leave any money on the cutting room floor. If opportunities come down to build more permanent supportive housing, to expedite the construction and acquisition of more housing, I want to know what we can do as a council to make it more efficient. And with your leadership and guidance, we passed historic legislation in the spring to make sure that all of the money we're getting now from the federal government can be stretched just that much further by cutting the cost of permanent supportive housing construction by $45,000 per unit, by suspending design review, by fast-tracking bureaucracy, by moving the red tape that has held us back for so long in fundamentally addressing this ongoing, almost 6-year state of emergency on homelessness. The investments that we have in this package are going to make a noticeable, felt impact for all folks in the community, for business owners, for housed residents, and especially for our neighbors experiencing homelessness who are unhoused, who don't have four walls and a door that locks and the privacy that the rest of us take for granted. I look forward to continuing to work on these partnerships because we know that despite the big strides that are being made here, our work is not going to be done yet to respond to the full crisis of homelessness in Seattle and King County. That it's going to require continued collaboration with our nascent regional housing and homelessness authority under CEO Mark Don's leadership, that is going to require even more support from the Biden administration Department of Housing and Urban Development, which has expressed homelessness as a priority of this administration in a way that we have frankly not seen for decades from the federal government. So with that, I don't have anything else to add here today except to say that this is an auspicious package. We have a lot more work in front of us to do, and this is an example of what can be accomplished when we come together as a county, when we come together as a city, and as we come together as a state to make sure that all of our resources are on the table together, and that instead of the right hand working against the left, we're all pulling together. So thank you so much, and appreciate you all being here this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. And last but not least, we're going to hear from Dan Weiss, who's Deputy Director of Catholic Community Services. I can't say enough about our service providers. This has been the most challenging year in our city's history, and through it all, the service providers were dealing in one of the most difficult, challenging spaces, but showing up every day to try to support and help people in some of their most dire times. Our city led the nation in many ways. We were the first in COVID, but we sit here today as probably one of the first cities that will reach 70% vaccination from our city. We have the lowest number of hospitalizations and deaths from COVID, including in our unhoused neighbors. And that is a testament to the very hard work that we did, coordinated the city, the county, public health, but also the service providers who were there on the front lines. And so with that, Dan, it's yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm delighted to be here today to highlight the partnership between Catholic Community Services and the City of Seattle, and our efforts to expand and create an array of innovative housing and services for people experiencing homelessness in our community. The new building across the street, Greenwood Apartments, is a partnership we're developing with Seattle Central and North Seattle College to help adults who are struggling to get back on their feet, who are going to school, struggling to finish their finals, all while not knowing where they're going to sleep tonight. This building will provide those adult students a home so they can focus on their studies and their future goals. This building is just one example of the many housing resources funded through the Seattle Rescue Plan. The scale of a plan provides a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to move beyond survival services and to truly address poverty and housing instability in our city. We finally have a robust federal investment in affordable housing and local leaders who believe we can and must act quickly. Throughout this pandemic, folks in my organization and others have been working day and night to keep people healthy and alive. I'll be honest, this pandemic has left us exhausted. So many of my colleagues got sick. So many of our clients, our neighbors, suffered tremendously. But this is not a time to rest. This is the time to find a new resolve, to take the lessons that we learned from this health crisis and unite in a common goal. We know that our neighbors are healthier when they have the dignity of a door, a key, and a stable home. We know that we are all healthier when our neighbors are housed. And so, Catholic Community Services is committed to doing everything in our power to provide paths out of homelessness and poverty. We will help people keep their housing by paying back rent and providing legal services to mitigate debt. We will help families access emergency housing vouchers so kids can stay in their school. We'll help a person who needs just a little bit of support get into an apartment through our rapid rehousing program, and folks who need deeper support connect to behavioral health services through our enhanced shelters. And we'll continue to develop new housing opportunities like the Greenwood Apartments. The crisis of homelessness in this community stems from decades of federal underinvestment in housing, historic racism in housing policies, and unequal access to wealth and health care. While we cannot undo this history in 1 year or with one plan, we can use this moment to propel our community forward and invest in the infrastructure necessary. Our organization is committed to this work and to working alongside and elevating the work of other community-based organizations that are run by and for BIPOC and LGBTQ+ communities. Our good partners, such as Fame Equity Alliance of Washington, Lifelong, Chief Seattle Club, We know that we need everyone and every organization to act with urgency to seize this opportunity. This is a momentous investment in housing. This is the moment where we can unite to create a city where people are healthy and honored, where they are nurtured and they are housed. Thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. You know, housing is healthcare, and it is the essential thing that if you don't provide it to people, nothing else can go right. And every time we see in the encampments, people highlight all the problems without focusing first on the human suffering and how we provide safer places, more opportunities, and making sure that along the way we invest in those things in our community to prevent more people from becoming unhoused. And that means centering equity and opportunity, investing in healthcare, affordable housing, all the things that really make a community safe and resilient. So any questions for anybody up here? Let's take it first on the issues we're here today, and then we can take questions, additional questions after that.
Mayor Durkan, you mentioned that there have been 50 people or so enrolled in rapid rehousing from these hotels. Can you talk a little bit about where those folks are in that process? And then second part of the two-part question, sorry, is
Only two. It's usually three.
Do you think that the folks who are in the hotels now, moving there from encampments, good candidates for rapid rehousing, or are they more likely to do better in some of these permanent supportive housing?
So on the first one, we can get you all the details on the individuals. I don't have that information here on where they are in each of the cycles. I think we can't, I think it's impossible to classify any category of people as a monolith. Are they eligible and for rapid rehousing, are they not? It really is going to depend on the individuals and I know that, for example, Lehigh's done tremendous work in getting people stabilized, seeing which people they can connect even with jobs, who's a candidate for rapid rehousing. And I think that's really the key to the long-term solution for homelessness is we can't treat homelessness like there's a monolith. They are individuals with individual stories. And the first thing you have to do is bring people inside, get them stabilized in an enhanced environment, and then you will see what paths are available.
Are you able to speak at all to how these investments will translate into some of the communities of color that are in need of housing?
Yes, as we move through these investments, it was really important to me and also to the council that we continue to center equity as we move these dollars in the community. So all of our RFPs will be really focused on, we know, for example, that it is absolutely clear that our communities of color have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, both on the economic fronts and the health fronts, and they are disproportionately represented in the unhoused community. And so if we want to truly deliver equitable services, we've got to be able to focus it that way.
You intend to let the eviction moratorium expire? Yours?
Sorry?
Is your eviction moratorium, you intend to let it expire?
I'm talking to the governor about what he's doing with his. But at this time, I don't think it's wise for there to be a lifting of the eviction moratorium because we are just coming out of COVID and the money is just starting to get into the community. You can feel things opening up. But I think that right now I really want to look at that data, but this is the wrong time for us to be turning people onto the streets.
So you mentioned that there's 70% vaccination rate and talked about how the unhoused have been vaccinated, did a good job with that. What about the lifting of the public health reasoning to remove a problematic camp? Is the city at that point yet where you don't have to have that, I don't want to say COVID excuse, but the reasoning for not removing a camp if it's problematic?
Throughout the pandemic, we have made it clear that if there is an encampment that presented a particular public health or safety and needed to be removed, we would do that, but we would first lead with outreach, trying to bring people inside. As you know, in a lot of encampments, people are reluctant on the final days to do that and end up moving. We don't want to just move people around. We do want to bring them inside. So we've addressed those encampments. We saw it in Albert Davis Park. We saw it early on in Ballard. We saw it in Chinatown International District. So we have continually tried to address if there's a true public health or safety.
Does it take something like a shooting in Ravenna for that to happen, for a camp to be removed?
No, there's been, as you know, Matt, we've had a number of encampments that we've had to move recently for various things, large fires, crimes of violence, other health considerations. And so we look at it on a case-by-case basis to really make a determination on what is the public health threat, not just to the community, but to the people who are living and residents of that encampment.
On the issue of the RV lot, where and how is that supposed to work, knowing that it is a concept that has failed miserably in the past in Seattle?
We're continuing to talk to council about that. We want to make sure that what we stand up is doable. We have RV lots right now. There's just not enough of them and they're too small, but we are operating some safe lots through places of faith, which is the way we could stand it up without having to do a lot of the bureaucracy that Councilmember Lewis. So they have not all been a failure. There just isn't enough of them. We have, the number of people who are living in vehicles has increased significantly. And so dealing with that issue is going to take a strategy that is different from people who are living in encampments.
But 25 spaces is clearly not enough.
No, 25 spaces will not handle it, but we've got to have some place we can move people and then also offer the same kind of resources and outreach. We've learned that from people who are experiencing homelessness but living in their vehicle, they view options differently than perhaps someone who's living in a tent. And so we have to meet people where they are. Go ahead.
When are people going to notice a difference? I mean, you say 50 houses here, 300 houses there, but still somebody walks out their door. They can't walk to the grocery store because it's a sea of tents and garbage. There's mental illness all around. They don't feel safe. When are people going to notice all of this investment? Because the reality is, the city's been spending millions.
So you will see in different parts of the city, there's already been a difference. But if the question is, will every tent be moved from the city of Seattle through these investments? The answer is no. It's pure math. We have over 4,000 people experiencing homelessness who are unsheltered in the city of Seattle. And we do not have 4,000 places to bring people, let alone 4,000 housing units, which is why projects like this are so critical, that we actually have 4 walls and a door and a long-term home for someone to live in. It's why our investment in permanent supportive housing is critical, but it's also why we need the federal government, the state, and the county to be all stepping up. We know, for example, our latest data indicates in the city of Seattle, probably 6 out of 10 of the people that we're spending money to support who are experiencing homelessness did not become homeless in the city of Seattle. It's why our regional homeless authority is so critical and why it's, I think, counterproductive for other cities to be passing more ordinances and laws that make it harder for people to stay in their own communities when they experience homelessness.
We're going to be talking to the school.
Yep, other people first. Wait, anyone who hasn't.
So, following up on that
Kevin.
question, you said that there's some places in the city where you can already notice a difference. Can you give some examples of some of those places?
I was go to Cal Anderson Park. There was a number of people who were experiencing homelessness there. The city was able to relocate many people inside, but others didn't. We moved the encampment. And I was there over the weekend, and there were hundreds of people enjoying and playing in the park. So I think we could give you a list. If you see the places where we've made a difference, there's many blocks in downtown now that it looks very different than it did weeks ago. We're not, I'm never going to say that we don't have a huge challenge right now. We do. We see it in every single community in the city. But we will try as we can, as places open up, to make sure that we move people from places that are unsafe and unhealthy into places that are safe and healthy, get them stabilized. And now we're going to have more units coming on board for people to move to. Everything got stuck last year. We had less shelter because we had to de-intensify it, give social distancing, so we had less shelter spaces. The ability to move people into apartments almost evaporated, and everything got stuck. We're hoping now, with a range of investments across the board, importantly in rapid rehousing, permanent housing, and the things that actually get people to things, you'll see more people move through the system more quickly. Kevin has a follow-up. It's fairness.
Pretty stuck 18 months ago, though. Right?
Actually,
all the shelters were full. You're managing, on a day-to-day basis, 2 or 3 openings.
No, I actually think that's not accurate, Kevin, but we can talk offline. I think before the pandemic, we were actually seeing in a lot of the metrics, we were making progress on levels. Now, did it solve everything? No. but we had moved more people into permanent housing than before. We had moved more people out of the shelter system. If it had been the homeless problem that we had 10 years ago, we actually would have solved it because we moved thousands of people into permanent housing. So it's not just that it was stuck, it's that the problem has gotten worse. And until we fix all of those upstream causes which aren't in the control of a city, it won't stop. It's our economy. You know, there are more and more people falling out of the economy. It is our criminal justice system that literally discharges people into homelessness. It's our inability to deal with behavioral health challenges, whether it's mental illness, substance abuse disorder, or both. So it's not just that it's stuck. The problem is getting worse because the systems have not been fixed. Go ahead. Yep.
And this might be a question for Emily.
Yep.
How much of this permanent supportive housing is going to be prioritized for the people who are in hotels right now who are not candidates for rapid rehousing? Is there like an issue with the waiting list situation? Are people being bumped to the top of the list?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think through our investments, we deploy a range of strategies. Some of the housing that we invest in through the PSH pilot and others is connected with the coordinated entry system because of funding. And so we expect that those housing units, especially because of the providers who operate them, will be serving the highest acuity, highest needs, most vulnerable chronically homeless folks. Then you'll see a range across the board. So here there's already a model in place to serve a population that's not being served through coordinated entry and other kinds of systems. It was created in a provider-driven, community-centered way in partnership with community colleges. And we see those different approaches in different locations. It's not one size fits all, but even as we do different approaches, we continue to have our focus on serving the highest needs folks who otherwise are unsheltered and taking up a lot of systems in jail and healthcare otherwise.
Can I get a Senator Frockt question? We heard that near historic investments in this last legislative session, but at the same time also hearing that there's going to be much more needed, obviously. What do you think the state legislature is prepared to do moving forward, or what ideas do you have?
Well, thank you for the question. I would say that we went really big, but probably not as big as the problem. It was sort of what the system could bear. I mean, I think $350 million, in particular the rapid capital acquisition, which is designed for hotel purchases or some kind of enhanced shelter, whatever, with maximum flexibility. That $120 million fund was very important. But you may recall, Hannah, that the mayor and several other mayors came out at the end and asked for an additional $400 million in federal money, and I pushed pretty hard, very hard for it, as well as former Speaker Chop, and we couldn't quite get that out of the operating budget. We were trying at the end to get at least another $100 million. We didn't get there. So one of the things we've talked about is that if we can help get this fund set up, if it can get leveraged down to the local communities, and people can see proof of concept in Seattle, but also in Vancouver, in Spokane, or in Tacoma, then we may be able to come back and ask for some more of that federal money. We have about $2 billion left that hasn't been spent. So that's sort of my sense of it. I would agree, though, that we're not, I think it's really historic, it's really important, but it's not fully there. I should also mention, we did exceptional work this year on behavioral health. I think within 2 years, we're going to have a new behavioral health hospital with the University of Washington up at the Northwest campus, where Northwest Hospital is, and that will start, among other things that we're doing as well in community-based behavioral health, to, I think, change over time the ability for us to give behavioral health services to those most in need.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on that one thing, and then we'll call it a day. But I want to thank Senator Frockt and the governor because they advocated very hard for us to get that money. Just for context, the state of California has spent over billions of dollars trying to solve homelessness in its cities. It's bought hotels, it did Project Roomkeep, Project Home. They used a significant amount of their federal dollars. We asked for 10% of the federal dollars that came to the state of Washington to go to the most acute issue that all of the cities are dealing with, and we didn't get any. We're still going to be advocating for it. We're hoping that this proof of concept works, but I do hope that when the legislature reconvenes, that they look at this, because it was mayors from Spokane, Vancouver, Seattle, Bremerton, all of us signing letters saying, please help us. We need the state to step up. And so we need the state to use those resources to help in every city. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.